Hello YouTube, my name is Asher. I am currently a graduate from Missouri State University and wanted to go over my medical school application. This is basically everything that I had for medical school, and I just wanted to walk you guys through it and explain what each kind of experience meant to me. We'll go through basically my grades, extracurriculars, which is the screen we're on now. I'll explain clinical hours and stuff like that. And then we'll get into MCAT and application. Okay, so the first thing that I really enjoyed for my undergraduate career was I worked as a phlebotomist in the ER and on the floors. One of the biggest things for working as a phlebotomist was that I was in and out of patients' rooms pretty constantly. So I got to meet a ton of patients. I got to understand their fears, different backgrounds, learn how to talk to people who were upset. Again, I was working, in the night. And so people don't really like to be woken up at 3 a.m. and poked, and I completely get it. So that really helped me empathize with them, talk to patients, understand their worries and their fears, and kind of get a better understanding of what it was like to communicate with patients in the hospital. I really enjoyed this experience. It was a great experience, specifically being a floor phlebotomist because, I was in neuro, I was in general, cardiac med surg, stuff like that. And so going from different floors, having to kind of understand, hey, I'm on the neuro floor, let's, have a different approach to this patient or something like that was huge. I think ER was kind of the flip side of that. It was go, go, go all the time. And I really did enjoy it. You had patients coming in for all different things. We were a level 1 trauma, so it was very cool to see that other side of medicine. So yeah. So I think being a floor phlebotomist was the best experience that I had for my undergrad. Now we just have some shadowing. Shadowing experience is where you follow around a physician and you basically kind of get to understand what they are, what it's like to be a physician. So I shadowed general surgery, I shadowed GI, and then this was vascular surgery, and I really enjoyed each of those opportunities. And I'm really grateful to be able to see kind of someone who went into internal med and then subspecialized in GI, general surgery, and then vascular surgery. Those were really cool to see. Vascular surgery, again, that was just clinical. I didn't really see any surgeries. GI, I did see a lot of surgeries. And then GI, I saw a lot of procedures. And then for general, I did see a lot of surgeries. That was the main thing that I saw. So volunteering is huge. You can get clinical or you can do non-clinical. So for me specifically, I really enjoyed cold water or food pantries. I like helping the community that I am around and making sure that everybody has food because, that's an essential need for the community. And when people don't have food, that's just another thing that they have to worry about. So getting people in need, getting them food, then they can focus on other things like, succeeding in their job, helping their kids and stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to volunteer at food banks and stuff like that. Animal shelter, I love animals. For a little bit, I was thinking about becoming a vet, but, I transitioned into human health and that seemed more interesting to me. However, in my free time, I do volunteer at an animal shelter. I, majority of the time, hang out with the cats, but if I go in and see, the dogs in the kennel haven't been let out for a while, I'll take a dog out for a walk and then play with them in a little play area. But yeah, volunteering is a great experience. You can make anything, kind of healthcare related or just do whatever you enjoy. I think for me, food is a big thing. Food pantries were a big thing. And then helping, animals as well was a big thing. So kind of on to more leadership. So physiology lab instructor, anatomy lab teacher's assistant. And then I was a research assistant in a physiology stress lab and then a pre-med mentor. So for these things, I'll kind of break down each one and kind of the timeline that I did it. So anatomy teacher's assistant, I was basically a TA in the cadaver lab. Anatomy at our school for our undergrads, we had cadavers, great experience. I got to teach on models and on cadavers. It was pretty cool. Really enjoyed the class, enjoyed teaching the students, and I was directly under an anatomy lab instructor. Then I transitioned to physiology lab. Physiology lab was basically learning the mechanisms and understanding the physiology for each organ system. We started out a little bit with cell, but then we moved to organ system. That was a great experience. That was definitely one of the best experiences on my application, and I really enjoyed it. one of the biggest things that I learned for physiology lab was that each student that came into my lab, they were at a different point in their learning than what I thought. So I kind of assumed that everybody was at kind of the same starting point and that me explaining stuff in class would just make sense to everybody, but it did not. And I think that's something that really helped me understand where students are coming from because, not everybody took cell biology before taking physiology. A lot of people just went from anatomy to physiology, so the term like ligand doesn't really mean anything to them. So understanding stuff a little bit more in depth to students who need it was really important. And then I can, that's the same for patients in the hospital. Some patients have no medical background, they don't know what's happening. And so being able to understand it in a way that makes sense, I think is huge. And so I kind of learned that from being a physiology lab instructor. Physiology stress lab research assistant. So this was kind of a spontaneous choice to get into a physiology research lab. I was teaching physiology, and the professor that taught physiology, my direct boss, was starting a research lab with alligators, and I thought that sounded super interesting because where I'm from, we don't have alligators. So I I asked her if I could, join her lab and kind of take on a project. The project I took on was, it was auditory stimuli to juvenile alligators. And so what we did was we had a white noise group and a auditory stimulus group. We played alligator noises from other juvenile alligators over the intercom, and we saw how that basically influenced their stress. It was a super interesting project. Really enjoyed getting kind of into the weeds of medicine and looking at the immune function and stress response. But yeah, I did really enjoy this one. Premed mentor, this was kind of what I did on the side. So I had 2 students that I would email and kind of keep up with, making sure that, they knew what to expect of kind of being pre-med in college. So I would email them, I sent them lists of kind of what to do freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year, and kind of used it as a checklist for them to keep up and understand, like, it's a process, but it's doable if you break it up into 4 years and you know what you're getting yourself into. All right, so here is my college coursework. I'm not going to touch on everything, but I'm going to explain a little bit about my background. So coming from high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know I wanted to be a physician. So my GPA transferring dual credit was a 2.7. That is pretty low. I was not proud of it. I had no study strategies in high school. I basically just showed up and took exams if I had them. And so I didn't really try in high school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Transferring now into college and kind of having a newfound interest in medicine that I talk about in my personal statement, I think that it was going to be an uphill battle, and being able to make mistakes and learn from them and not get discouraged was huge. That was one of the biggest things that I wanted to focus on. So one of the things that I'm going to point out is just me constantly getting better. Exam scores, grades in classes and stuff like that. Starting out, human biology, psychology, lab, things like that, just general classes. Everybody who is pre-med has to take these general classes. Then we have sophomore year, genetics, very tough class. And then I want to point out something. So general chemistry 1. This was a extremely hard class. I was not prepared for it. The first 2 exams I did not do well in. I just really wasn't studying or didn't know how to study, so I was just very passive with my techniques, and we're going to see that constantly go up. So sophomore summer, I took religion, and then not seen here is Gen Chem 2, where I get a B in that class. I get a high B because it was A-B system, so I think I got like an 88%, but there were no pluses and minuses, unfortunately, with that class that I took. So again, constantly going up. Human anatomy, amazing class. Like I said, I was a teacher assistant for it. We had cadavers, loved that class. We had case studies. We had lab with the cadavers. It was great. Organic chemistry. Now we're moving on to things that I really do like. Organic chemistry was way better than Gen Chem for me. You could draw out mechanisms. It made more sense to me for some reason, and a lot of people say organic chemistry is really hard. Yes, it was super hard, but going to office hours, drawing mechanisms on the whiteboard really did help me a lot. And so that's how I got an A in that class. Nutrition, great class. I think everybody should take it. But yeah. Okay, organic chemistry 2. Slight decrease. We got an A-, which again, I think is pretty good for organic chemistry. One of the things that we did in Orgo 2 was we took something called the ACS exam, which is like, I believe it's a 2-hour-long class where it's a 2-hour-long exam that is standardized. You have 200 questions and you just try your best, basically. A lot of the curriculum that we learned for Organic 2 was not high yield on that exam. So I ended up doing pretty bad. I think the national average was like 44%. And then before the curve, because our professor curved it, I think I got like a 25%. So not the best. But again, I was walking into that with 100 or 2. I felt pretty good on the material and stuff like that. And so I ended up with an A-. I believe it was a high A- too. Peer instructed, so that's just going to be, we basically learned how teachers teach and kind of just followed lab instructors. And I think that's what this A in this class is what got me an A, or got me to teach physiology. Physics 1, summer class, got a B+ in it. I thought Physics 1 was very hard, especially doing online labs, because you didn't really have office hours. You can really go anywhere to ask any questions. So I spent a lot of extra time doing YouTube videos and stuff like that, other than, the lectures that were given. Okay, now we're getting into like more of my major classes. So we have Physics 2. Again, we got an increase, B+ to an A. Physics 2 was way more enjoyable than Physics 1, and I think that's just because I took it in person and actually could go to the professor if I had questions, and so it was a lot easier than taking it over the summer where it was more compact. Molecular cell biology, this was cell bio, one of my classes that we take, and the way that they do those exams is it's written, and it's kind of based on a hierarchy of how well do you know the information. So you started off with some multiple choice, some defining questions, so you just answered like a definition, like what is a ligand? You would answer what a ligand was, and then it got progressively harder. So it would be, a biotech technique that you could use in the lab, like a Western blot, Northern blot, and you would have to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and it ended up being it was a written exam. So you'd have it was 10 pages, and by the time you got to the last 3 pages, you were writing for the whole time. It was a very hard exam. I think that cell bio and molecular bio, which you'll see a little bit later, really pushed me to kind of understand the science better, and I feel like those classes did a really good job at that, as well as the professors. Okay, medical micro, got a B+ in. That was a good class. It was a very fun one. Biology of HIV and AIDS, good class. Human physiology, that's the lab portion that I ended up teaching, but enjoyed this class, got an A in it. Biochem, got a B+. Very difficult class. I did really well on all the exams except for lipids. I think I got a C+ on that exam. And if I didn't, I would have got an A, which was unfortunate, but very hard class. Cancer bio, great class, took that over the summer. Biotech, embryology, all good classes, upper level courses. See, in the upper level ones, I started getting more A's, which I thought definitely helps your application. All right, and then my last semester, I had virology, molecular bio, and then senior seminar. Those classes are over now, and I did good in each of those classes, so I am happy with that. I believe my cumulative GPA, including my 2.7, was and yes, I did take science classes in high school that transferred over. So I think my science GPA was a 3.53, and then my cumulative was a 3.6. My actual GPA, and what I've kind of been building on in Missouri State, I believe was around a 3.7, and my science was around a 3.6. So definitely moved up since that and grew as a student, understood study strategies and stuff like that, and I think that was really important for my growth in kind of prepping me for medical school. I'm just going to leave it at this page. This is kind of the awards section that they have for the AA COMAS. application. It's the achievement portion, Dean's List. You can see them here, but I'm not going to talk about these. What I want to talk about is, so my application was based on my philosophies as a phlebotomist, as a learner, and as an educator when I taught these classes. So one of the biggest things that I really wanted to do was apply to DO schools. I feel like from a holistic standpoint, which is, something that they preach, not only do they talk about it, but they also have an extra class. And I think for the OMM medicine that they have, it just gives another outlet for, helping the patient. Even if it doesn't work in specific scenarios, that's completely fine. I just think doing an extra class and kind of learning it is important to healthcare and being able to treat your patients with the best ability that you can. So I ended up applying to DO schools, and that was kind of the biggest reason for that application. So that's my application. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, so that's the application. And yeah, hope you enjoyed.